Okay, so what was the Tuskegee syphilis study? My name's Kaylee Nesbitt, and I'm going to talk to you guys about what it was and why it was controversial. I think first it's important to talk about what syphilis is. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted infection. It can be transmitted through direct contact with a sore during vaginal, anal, or oral sex, and it can even transfer from mother to an infant at birth or while they're developing in the uterus. Syphilis can cause serious health problems if it's not treated, like at the beginning stages, and there's 4 stages with different symptoms, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Syphilis has 4 major stages. The primary one is like within the first couple weeks of coming in contact with a sore from someone else, sores start to appear at that original place of contact. And it's usually on or around the genitals, the anus, it can be in the rectum, or it can be in or around the mouth from oral sex. And they're not always noticeable. They can just be like round, firm, and painless. Some people don't even realize that it's an STI. And that the primary stage can last between like a few weeks to a few months. And then it goes into the secondary stage, which is where the sore kind of like goes away, but turns into this rash across your body. Lymph nodes become swollen, you get a fever, feel weak, headaches, and then just some severe pains. And these can be mild and go unnoticed in some people. And that can last a few more months, up to 18 months, I believe, and then it goes into the latent stage, which there's no visual signs or symptoms of syphilis at all, and the ability for it to be passed along to others reduces significantly. And then in the tertiary phase of syphilis, there can be severe medical problems. It just is like in your body and can go around and attack almost any organ. So like we talked about in the last slide, if syphilis isn't treated and it makes it all the way to the 4th tertiary stage, it can spread to different parts of your body and start to affect it in more severe ways. And a couple of these ways are it can get into the brain and nervous system, which causes neurosyphilis. And symptoms from this include difficulty coordinating muscle movements, severe headaches, dementia, so your brain is like deteriorating, paralysis and numbness, and the like paralysis, numbness, and coordinating muscle movements can like be random. And then if syphilis gets into the eye, this causes ocular syphilis, and symptoms from this range from just like changes in your vision, maybe needing glasses, all the way to blindness. Like some people lose their vision. And so as we can see, syphilis isn't necessarily dangerous if it's caught early on, but over time it becomes a very like detrimental infection. All right, now that we know what syphilis is, let's talk about the Tuskegee syphilis study. This was a clinical study that took place in Tuskegee, which is in Macon County, Alabama. The intention of this study was to observe the history of the natural progression of syphilis over time if it were left untreated. There was already a modern treatment, and I put that in quotes because it was like a mixture of heavy metals, and it was just like their guess at the time. I think it helped, but it wasn't a cure. And I think it included mercury, so maybe not the best thing, The researchers who were like performing this study did not collect informed consent from the participants. The only permission that was communicated and requested were their rights to perform autopsies on their bodies after they died in exchange for like a proper burial. The study took place from 1932 to 1972, which is 40 years. It lasted through the Depression, through World War II, through the Cold War, and into the Civil Rights era. Now I want to talk to you guys about what happened in the study and why it was so controversial and why it's still talked about today. What happened is white government doctors from the U.S. Public Health Service found 600 African American men to participate in this study. 400 of these men they had late-stage syphilis, which was referred to as bad blood, and 200 of these men didn't have syphilis. They were being treated for things that like maybe headaches or something that could be synonymous with symptoms of syphilis, but they didn't have anything going on. So the Public Health Service doctors consciously decided not to treat the men with syphilis so that they could study the effects. And remember, this is after they had already not gotten consent. Like, these people had no idea what was going on. They thought they were being treated, but they were being given, like, aspirin and iron tonics, which are not actual treatments for syphilis. Like, not even current for the time. And so it was implied through deception that they were to cure bad blood. These doctors were, like, pretending to help these people and not helping them at all. And penicillin was discovered as a miracle drug, which they found was able to cure syphilis. It could fully eradicate syphilis in early stages and even latency in some cases if organ damage had not already occurred. And this became widely available after World War II, and it was still not given to the people in this study, these African American men who didn't even know they were a part of a study. What happened to the men in the study? So after the discovery of penicillin and its benefits to fully eradicate syphilis, the study continued another 3 decades. What? They already found a cure? It can save people's lives? What? And on top of that, they did not offer penicillin to the participants of this study, these forced participants. And some personal accounts and arguments have said that the treatment was actively withheld from them. They would try to get it somewhere else or something like that, and they were denied help. And as we've seen, syphilis can be lethal in some cases. And even if it's not lethal, it causes serious health problems. And so a lot of these African American men survived, but others fell ill to it. And the ones that did survive, they were still infected, and they passed it on to their wives and sexual partners. And through these women, it was passed along to the children, because the bacterium can enter a fetus, which causes, in some cases, for them to be stillborn. In an infant, they can develop blindness, deafness, nose or teeth abnormalities, neurological complications, and sometimes death in infancy as well. So, like, they've found a cure. They can help these people that they have been, like, actively hurting this whole time. And they're like, nah, we're good. We're going to keep studying what happens. What? So, this whole time, they're doing all this research, and studies are being published. So, this is visible in our country. It's happening and people kind of know about it. I don't think they know about, like, that it's people of color and that it's forced, but somehow or other, information gets out, some reporters get a hold of it, and they're like, what the actual is going on here? This is not cool. And so there's all this media and press, and there's an ad hoc advisory panel that's put together, and they recommend the study end, oddly enough. Right? This is so weird. And then, like, almost 20 years later, in 1997, President Clinton comes out and he gives a formal apology for what happened. And he really, like, supports and promotes the National Center for Bioethics and Research in Healthcare at Tuskegee University. And then through that, there are major changes that are made to standard research practices, which are still being upheld as the highest ethical standards that go on today, which if you've taken any psychology class, you have a basic understanding of. But essentially it's that people participating in a study have to know like what the study is about and what's going to happen to them. And sometimes there can be deception, but they have to be told about what's happening afterwards, and it can't be anything that can put them in like physical or mental like danger. And so because of all of this, like these standards changed, but at what cost? The traumatic effects of the Tuskegee syphilis case endure today. There is still ongoing pain to the family members of those who were subjected to this unwillingly. It was an experimental monstrosity and racial injustice. I mean, it caused like this huge mistrust between people of color and the medical field. And what's making it worse about the Tuskegee syphilis case specifically is there are missing facts. So it's really malleable. Like things are misinterpreted. There are rumors. Like some people believe that the men were injected with syphilis. There's like no real proof, but people, like it's talked about. And then men definitely were kept from getting treatment. There's proof of that. There's just like so many questions. We don't know the full depth of what even happened. And the trauma, the betrayals of trust, it just invokes all of this anger, guilt, shame, and sorrow. And understandably so. What happened was incredibly messed up and just heartless, really. I mean, was it worth it to study syphilis? I don't think so. So, anyways, that's my report. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to show you the works cited. I got a lot of my research from the CDC, but I also found this really cool book through the library called Examining Tuskegee, the Infamous Syphilis Study and Its Legacy. And it's available for free on the library if you guys want to thumb through it at all. It was really interesting. It talks about like how messed up it was, but also gives personal accounts, which I think is just like really powerful. So yeah, this was my presentation. Thanks for making it all the way to the end, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll do what I can to get back to you. Cheers.